The Trend Zone is back after a week off around Thanksgiving, and we're going to get through week 12. We're going to go through one item per person that jumped off the page and then transition into week 13, the week before everybody, or 2 weeks before everybody's fantasy playoffs begin for the most part. And then we're going to have a special segment to talk about the Broncos, because I think between the four of us, we've decided that they've hit a quagmire that isn't really solvable. So we're going to do a little surgery tonight to figure out what they can actually do, what is wrong. And, it's going to be a lot of different theories floated around. So stay tuned for that. But let's jump into West week 12 in the NFL. I want one item. I don't know if it was tough to narrow it down, but give me one thing that stood out for you, sir.
Not too terribly tough for me to narrow down, as I didn't actually have a chance to watch a lot of football. I was traveling a lot and doing a lot throughout the week. The one game I did get to watch from start to finish was the Patriots-Vikings game on Thanksgiving Day, the evening game. And I thought it was a nice bounce-back game for the Vikings after kind of a letdown game on national TV against the Cowboys the week prior, where they got throttled at home. They righted the ship. They won a primetime game when many pundits said that they were incapable of doing so. They did it against the NFL's best defense and the NFL's best head coach ever. And yeah, I was thoroughly impressed the way that they bounced back. I thought that with some of the subtractions along the offensive line, that Belichick would have been able to take advantage of that to his benefit, and it would be another long day for the Vikings, but they responded. Everybody seemed to step up, and yeah, I liked what we saw. Special teams, man, they killed it. They absolutely killed it against Belichick, who started in the league as a special teams coordinator. So that's his bread and butter, and I know that really probably stung for him to see so many letdowns and follies on his bread and butter.
Yep. Man, what a relief that was. I'm over here. Cowboys just played. I'm in Texas. We just got whooped by the Cowboys. I was like, at my wife's parents for Thanksgiving, and I was like, please win this game. Please win this game.
Yeah. Every Vikings win, minus the very first one, is the same. They come out hot in the first drive. They go to bed on offense in the second, third quarter, and then they turn into the 2007 Patriots in the fourth quarter. And nobody knows why they can't play that type of defense throughout the whole game. This Ed Donatel stuff is very curious in the first three quarters. But that's for a Vikings show. Wes compliments the Vikings, and the Patriots usually like to make you left-handed. That's the old adage for the Belichick, and the Vikings went supremely right-handed. Just JJ down your throat, and whether you like it or not. So advantage O'Connell in that matchup. Jason, your first item, the downtrodden. Jason Bolin, tell us about week 12.
The downtrodden is right. I don't think that this is really a surprise, but I was looking at, and I'm kind of secretly a fan of these guys because I work with a guy that's a pretty big fan of them, and is the Commanders. Mm-hmm. Albeit they got a close win over the Falcons. That's, God, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that 5 out of 7? 6 out of 7.
Only lost to the Vikings.
Wow. Mm-hmm. What a little run that these guys have been going on. And now quietly, I think they're only, how many games back in the East are they?
They play it's actually my next talker in the next round here is they play the Giants. They are 7-5, the Commanders, because they still have a bye week coming up. So they're only 2 games back of the Eagles and then 1 game back of the Cowboys.
Yeah, and technically they, in the midst of this little run, though, they got that nice victory over the Eagles. So, Boy, the Commanders, I don't know, they're really, really impressing me. Another fun stat is Carson Wentz, if anybody remembers him, he has more touchdown passes than Russell Wilson, hasn't played since week 6. So
Yeah, and we're still on Russell Wilson touchdown to Russell Wilson bathroom watch.
he's
He
not
has
going to
12
eclipse that,
bathrooms
Cody.
in his house.
Nope. No, but yeah, I like the Commanders, and I think, gosh, they're going to be a tough team in that NFC. I think sneakingly good for some reason, and Heineke is doing just enough, getting a couple touchdowns a game and not lighting the scoreboard up or anything like that. But I think they're going to get some guys back. I think Young is back now, right?
Yeah, I think he is officially back, like off IR, but they're just waiting for the correct
and it's
time
good
to put him.
It's good to see that defense too play like we all kind of thought and know that they were capable of doing. They kind of took a step back last year, which is a little bizarre, but
none of us could figure it out.
But yeah,
they're feeding off of Heineke's energy, and it feels a lot like Case Keenum in 2017, where the guy probably at his core isn't very good, but the teammates just love him.
You're right.
He's feisty as hell. And it's really weird that they continue to win. But I guess at some point, just like the Vikings, we got to just say, all right, these guys are good.
Yeah. And with that impressive win over Philly, I mean, in Philadelphia, I mean, so that shows right there that they got some grit to them. And yeah, that was a heck of a comparison with Keenum too.
Yeah, it feels like
identical.
That. Yeah. Cause I tried to figure out why some folks are so high on Heineke, because all of the quarterback metrics, PFF, DVOA, CPOA, EPOE, they're all like, nah, this guy isn't very good. And then you keep looking up, and 6 out of the last 7, coincidentally, as soon as he got in there, they started winning.
Yeah. If only awesome. They had a stat for Mojo, that would be Taylor Heineke.
Yeah.
All right, Cody, I think you're about to steal mine, but go ahead and try.
I will. I know which one you're thinking I'm going to go for.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say Jaguars stunned the Ravens. They let their nuts hang on that. That's not who I picked, but good. I did want to shout out the baby Jags, my little baby Jags.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's the Jets. I think everybody here on the show is a fan of what the Jets have put together this offseason, obviously minus Zach Wilson besides me over the summer. But they had a big decision to make with their backup quarterback, Mike White. And it looks like they made the right one, which kudos to the Jets. They usually don't do that. This guy passed for 315 yards and 3 TDs in their 31-10 over the Chicago Bears. He's just the 5th player to have multiple 300-yard, 3-touchdown games in his first 4 starts. The Jets put up 466 yards of offense. 466, the Jets. I mean, those words just don't belong together.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's insane. And here's the crazy thing is they've only done that 3 times in the last 4 years. It was Mike White who started all 3 of those games.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So you got to think, you got to think Robert Saleh sticks it out with Mike White. Let's see. I have another stat here that I also thought was interesting. He's 3rd in yards from a QB's first 4 starts. He is narrowly outpaced by Mahomes and Herbert. I mean, the comparison for this guy is crazy. They cannot bench this kid. I'm rooting for him. On the flip side, if this all falls apart for the Jets before the end of the season, I mean, you got to feel like this New York team is maybe like a Jimmy G or an Aaron Rodgers away from really doing some damage. But, I mean, for me, I'm definitely rooting for Mike White. He's the ultimate success story. I hope this week he doesn't do that great. I have a feeling like he's going to do good, but I do think that we're going to cover the spread and everything. We're going to win this game. But, I mean, we got a sketchy history versus these backup quarterbacks. So I feel like Minnesota fans everywhere this week are kind of, sweating it a little bit.
Sketchy history with the old coaching staff. They've encountered backups 3 times, I believe, in 2022, and it's been fine and dandy. And maybe the guy played better than you'd think, but at least they found the win. When you talked about
White looks like a badass too, kind of.
White Mike, yeah. So you talked about, Cody, about Zach Wilson and that going pear-shaped. Wes and I have been doing the show about 2 years, and we've learned 2 things emphatically that I've sworn to him I'm going to repeat over and over. And the first one is that divisions that look stacked in the preseason do not pan out. And you, Sir Cody, got to listen, because we're coming up on that time of the year. Quarterback classes are not infallible. At least half of them won't be any good. So I want you to.
I knew you were going to say that.
I knew you were going to say.
I actually think about it a lot. I'm over here like, okay. So like Mac Jones, got to toss him out with the trash. Zach Wilson, you got to toss him out the trash. So I mean, it's either Justin Fields, Trey Lance, or Trevor Lawrence. But you know me and my Trey Lance fan,
Yep.
he's still going to be the best quarterback out of this
Oh,
class.
yes.
Without a doubt.
But more importantly, when we get to
Dude hasn't played 5 years, man.
yeah, it's getting there. When we more importantly, when we get to January, February, March, and April, I'm going to challenge you show after show, because you're going to go hog wild over this class. And I'm going to say, all right, you find me the 3 bad ones that are coming out of the first round, and you won't be able to do it. I know you, sir.
Oh, I know. I don't know. I'm kind of, yeah, you guys do know me. I'm over here like I'm off CJ Stroud. I'm not into Will Levis, but wait till April comes around and I'm going to be like,
you're going to be
"These
convinced.
guys."
Yeah. The thing about the quarterback, now it seems like we call it a joke, but it's not even me being a negative Nancy. It's just that the hype machine is so awesome and so great in those 3 months that every dude is like, oh my God, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. And I swear to God, if you extrapolate every draft class, usually most of them aren't worth a damn. But I always say conservatively, half of them aren't going to be what they think they are, because, you know, Sam Darnold could still pan out to be an average starter. Baker could have a career renaissance, but it doesn't seem like that now. Speaking of those types of quarterbacks, yes, the Jaguars were mine. Mine was more with Lawrence, because I watched that on Red Zone and they stayed on it forever. And that was his moment where he's going to make that pivot. He's not going to be just, wait until this guy starts to develop. He developed on the fly against a very good football team, the 2-point conversion and the touchdown pass to win it. That was like kind of like his young Peyton Manning moment, where like, we were right about this guy. There's a reason.
I was all raising the roof in the living room, doing high steps like Russell Wilson on a plane.
Oh, man. Oh, geez.
So I think he officially, even though they're not going anywhere, officially, if you had any doubt about whether or not he's going to be any good, this was a growing year for Peterson and himself, and that was his game. It wasn't against the Texans or some moron franchise. It was against the Ravens, and he was impeccable in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. And how wild was it that you said you were watching on Red Zone, so I'm pretty sure we both saw this. Justin Tucker's lining up for the 67-yard kick, and I look at my roommate and I'm like, oh man, like the Jags, they're getting Justin Tucker. Like, this is 67 yards in a clutch moment, and we look at each other and we know in our heart of hearts, Justin Tucker's about to make this kick, and he kicks it, and you see Doug Peterson, and this guy's just like, like he just,
it was perfect.
And you knew he was going to make it.
Would have been good.
The fact he did not make this 67-yarder, and even the Jaguars coaches were like, oh, like swiping the wet off their brow. That shows you how much of a weapon Justin Tucker is. 67 yards away, and we were convinced this man was about to make it. And he would have if it was a 65-yarder.
I sat down with my wife and family at dinner, and I told my wife, I was like, thank God I don't like gamble. I was like, because I would have probably bet $700 that was going to be good.
Oh, without a doubt.
And every one of his field goals is picturesque and perfect. Yeah. And that one was just short by 2 yards.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see like a split of you replace Justin Tucker's average kicks that he does make with the NFL average, and to see the Ravens records over the years, how much they would change in those points. I feel like he has to add at least 1, if not 2 wins to the schedule every single year as a kicker. That's insane.
Jason, were you going to jump in and say something? I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I couldn't
about
agree
McManus.
With you. McAnus. Tucker loves those opportunities, man. I mean, you trot, you get an opportunity to do a 69-yarder, you trot him out there again. Yeah, I mean, because he makes that 4 out of 5 times.
Yeah, I for sure. I didn't even think about this until Cody just said it. Like probably the body politic of NFL fans was shocked when he didn't make a record-setting field goal. That's where we're at with him.
Right.
Yeah, that's impressive.
University of Texas, Hook 'em horns.
All right, Wes, before we get into the Broncos chat, give me one thing you're taking a peek at for this Thursday and Sunday and Monday.
This Thursday, Sunday, and Monday. I'm actually looking forward to Packers Bears.
Why?
The reason being,
it's an awful game.
It is, but I'm hoping that Justin Fields play, and this is not fantasy driven. This is Aaron Rodgers put a stamp on the Bears franchise last year that he owns them. And this is there's like no more opportune time for the Chicago Bears to prove that, he's mortal and to right this ship than a home game against the Packers where Rodgers has a broken thumb and bruised ribs and is coming down off ayahuasca high and whatever else that excuse that he has lined up. So that's what I'm looking for. I would love nothing more than to see the Bears just put that final nail in the coffin of the Packers season.
So you substantially dislike the Packers a lot more than the Bears. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
In recent history, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll always have more disdain for the Packers because they're so damn good, but they're pretty 1A and 1B. Once I convince myself that, Packers are my primary problem in life, then I turn on a Bears game and like, I hate these bastards too. So
I do as well.
See,
I do as well, but
yeah,
go ahead.
Or no, you go ahead and finish.
Oh no,
Okay.
Yeah, go for it. I'll come in after.
As a fan of since 2009, the Bears don't really weigh on me much, but let me tell you, I am salivating at Aaron Rodgers' downfall. As bad as that sounds, and I was telling my wife earlier, I was like, this guy goes to another team, I'll be a fan. But as far as having to go up against this guy over the years, I mean, I remember back in 2011, I'm getting my first taste of this rivalry between the fans on social media and stuff like that. And you got Aaron Rodgers drinking purple soda, purple orange, or purple crush at the end of games, and just all the little petty stuff over the years to where it felt like we didn't really have a chance. I can't wait. And I can't wait to see the mess. Like I've mentioned before, he has his team on a stranglehold. They're due $60 million guaranteed to Aaron Rodgers next year, whether he wants to play for him or not. He could retire and get out of it, but
yeah, I don't think he can go.
It's gonna be a mess.
I don't think he can. You talked about maybe playing elsewhere. That was a last year talker. I don't think he can even go. He'd have to sit out for 2 years.
Yeah, he'd have to retire for them to get off the hook.
Yeah. And because the way that I understand it now is that the $99 million cap hit next year. Well, we'll talk about this with the Broncos. Is that the Packers won't be on the hook for that if Rodgers retires. They still have to pay something like between 40 and 60 spread out over 2 or 3 years, but it's not quite down the line as the dead cap indicates on SpotRack or overthecap.com. So they have that going for them. However, if they did trade him, I don't think another team can electively say, we'll take the dead cap. I think that stays on the Packers books regardless. So the prognosis of him possibly playing for the Jets or those, I don't think there's a way. I think when they signed that new humongous extension for 3 years, that's Rodgers' money if he wants it.
Yeah, the only way I could see it would be like a Brock Osweiler Browns salary dump, possibly. But the only other team who could really afford to take on that type of money, really, realistically, is the Bears. And I don't see that happening either, which would be totally fun and awesome for all types of reasons. But that's definitely not going to happen.
Yeah. All right, Jason, before we get into Broncos chatter, one thing from week 13.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm looking forward to the Vikings Jets game. I mean, my entire family will be at that game, so my youngest son will actually get to go see some good football. So that'll be good. Like I said before the show, I did give him my blessing to, if he wanted to, and if he should decide to become a Vikings fan after this, I will be okay with it. No big deal. Poor kid has never watched good football. I feel so bad for him. But I think this is going to be a great game. Jets got a really good defense. Mike White, as you guys alluded to a little bit earlier, is making that offense. I mean, wow, what he did was just incredible. Gosh, if I think this is going to be a great test for the Vikings offense too. Mm-hmm. If the Vikings can come out and get a nice victory over the Jets, man, that'll be another good win to stack in that win column. I mean, following up with what you guys mentioned earlier, that was a great win against the Patriots as well. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to watching that matchup.
I've spent most of this week thinking about this game for my job, and I'm torn, always thinking like, all right, you got to beat the Jets at home, like, because I'm like, this is the Jets. And then I look at the metrics and they're damn good defensively. If White Mike is any good for the long term, then they're going to be pretty formidable overall because their special teams are average, but the defense is just as good as the Patriots without Belichick's stamp on it, like, his personal branding. But then I'll, when I go to bed, then I'll be like, it's the goddamn Jets. Come on.
Now, if it would have been just Zach Wilson,
yeah.
and, because before 3 weeks ago, we were talking about the Jets, nobody really knew how good these guys were.
Mhm.
Because they had a great defense, but Zach Wilson wasn't doing anything. And then now you got a quarterback in there that, it could be a flash in the pan with this guy.
Mhm.
I mean, he's done it, a couple different times before, which is awesome. But if he can sustain this would be just an incredible story.
Well, last year he turned into a pumpkin and they benched his ass in a hurry, I think, to get back on the Wilson train when he wasn't as stinky.
So he had one good game last year and then kind of fell off.
He threw for 405 yards, I believe, against the Bengals, 2 or 3 touchdowns. Had an ordinary game the next week, which was blah, like 200 yards. And then against the Bills, 0 touchdowns, 4 picks. And
my gosh.
Yep. And then the legend of White Mike was over, at least for about a year. And they went back to Wilson and, Flacco or whatever for the beginning of the season because Wilson was hurt. So they've settled on White. And I don't know, last week at this time, we didn't talk, but I was convinced the Vikings would be just fine against Mac Jones. And then he looked like Brady. I've said it 100 times this week that you might as well had Brady playing for the Patriots because 382 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, no fumbles. That's Brady. And so it really wouldn't matter if it was Mac Jones or Tom Brady in that game because the Patriots somehow played error-free football and lost.
That's incredible.
Who didn't, or who did know Zach Wilson wasn't the guy? Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore is watching those second and third string receivers catching all those nice passes at practice and was like, we need this guy to start. And then as soon as he gets in there, he's putting up a decent stat line again.
Yeah.
Well, Mike White's good game of the year is over then. Now he's going to go back into, his shell and be dormant for the next year.
Richard Sherman said on somebody's podcast this week pretty emphatically that Mike White is a franchise quarterback. And I'm like, couldn't you say that next week? I don't want to have to think about that all week.
Either way, it should be a good game. Should be a good game of football.
Yeah, even if Mike White is back on his average game, it's Vikings football, which means it's going to come down to within 8 points. Somebody's going to win it, or God forbid they get their asses kicked because that happened not too long ago by the Cowboys.
I think the best thing about the Vikings, though, is their I guess if you want to call it a rebound game after the shellacking. Yeah, I thought that speaks volumes of the way the team is coached, the way that they come together, and everything about it. So I thought that was great. That kind of proved your point that you shared on Twitter, didn't it? A little bit, about the Super Bowl teams that got just devastated. That one game. Yeah.
If they wanted to be considered the real deal, they had to somehow, no matter how they did it, win against the Patriots. Otherwise, it's a crime to lose back-to-back at home when you want to be considered a Super Bowl contender. If you want to go on the road and do that shit, it happens, but not at home. All right, Cody, your Week 13 item.
For me, it's I also like the Miami and San Fran game. It was between that one and the Kansas City and Cincinnati game. For me, watching that Kansas City-Cincinnati game, this is a rematch of the AFC Championship last year. I really thought the Chiefs were going to take that one and go on to win the Super Bowl. So I fully expect the Chiefs to come out of this one angry. On the other note, when Jamar Chase was questionable against Tennessee last week, I wondered if they'd be extra cautious, hold him out, maybe fire him up a week later against the Chiefs. And that's exactly what they did. In their previous meeting in Week 17 last season, Jamar Chase went off for 10 catches, 266 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That is insane. The fact is, with Joe Mixon, Iffy, and Taylor Boyd's better served as a number 3 receiver. I mean, Jamar Chase can change the entire complexion of Cincinnati's offense and Kansas City's defense. Assuming he returns, Jamar Chase is a big enough piece to sway this to where, I'm comfortable taking the home team to win, and they could beat this Chiefs team to lay a stake and that they're the team to beat in the AFC. Because right now with the Bills struggling, and I mean the Ravens just lost to the Jaguars, it's the Chiefs and who else? It's the Chiefs versus whoever wins the
Miami
NFC.
Dolphins. No.
There you go. There you go. I'll give
That's
you
it.
that. They were kind of leaking out, but I mean, we're gonna get to see that. I'm hoping someone talks about Miami and San Fran, just in case nobody does. I mean,
Yeah, you better do it because I'm not gonna.
Yeah. Okay, then real quick, this is just like a new rivalry we could be seeing blossom into the league. You got so many layers from Jeff Wilson trade, Mike McDaniel return, the Twitter beef that they have this week with Raheem Mostert saying that Miami's squad is better talented. You got San Fran, which is the best defense in the entire league right now. They haven't allowed a second half point in the last 4 games, which is nuts. They're making these halftime adjustments and they are executing. And then you also got Miami's offense, which has been amazing. Tua is quietly having such an elite year. Everybody's saying Mahomes for MVP because, I mean, who wouldn't? But if he does have a challenger, who is a dark horse for the MVP? It could be Tua. This guy is killing it. Tua is PFF's baby. Like he is the perfect PFF quarterback, and an offense like that with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that's all you need. You just need someone to go do the layups and distribute the ball. I mean, they're deadly. So I'm super interested in seeing this number 1 defense and this top offense go at it. We usually see defense come out on top. I do have San Francisco in this game, but this could be a Super Bowl preview right here.
On the Miami Wes's Dolphins, every morning I drop my kids off at school. The schools are like 4 blocks apart, and I listened to probably about 10 minutes of ESPN radio. And I swear to God, in the last week, about 3 times at that time slot, I've heard them question whether or not Tua and the Dolphins can win in the cold in January. So that's something to keep an eye on, whether they have to go to Buffalo or Baltimore. I've never, besides that old Buccaneers stat when we were kids about they were 0-40 when it's temperatures under 40, whatever. Well, I think it was 0-20 something when temperature was under 40. And I've never really bought into cold stats, but if there ever was one, it is a Southern market team with a Southern based quarterback. And so there might be something there to keep an eye on. And then you talked about MVP. I wrote an article about this on Vikings territory, that if Justin Jefferson wins the receiving crown, crosses 2,000 yards, and the Vikings finish about 14-3 or 13-4, I believe he will get votes more so than Cooper Kupp's single one last year. I don't know if they're funky enough to overtake Mahomes, but I think they need a symbol, and 2,000 yards would be the symbol that the voters could defend their case. So, and a non-quarterback hasn't won it since Adrian Peterson, 2012, exactly 10 years ago. So it might just be a Viking award when it's not a quarterback award. But that's only if he crosses 2,000 and he tops Tyreek Hill and the Vikings keep winning. That is not my talker for the week. I'm talking way too damn much, but I want to say the Commanders-Giants game is more so than just an NFC East rivalry. They have almost identical records, so it will determine who is gnawing at the 7th seed and who is gnawing at the 6th and 5th seed the rest of the way. Because that division is so competitive, whoever wins this game will have a tiebreaker and will probably not get the 7th seed. And the team that loses is going to have to start worrying about the Seahawks, because if you don't believe the Seahawks are frauds and 6-5, they're going to end up being 7-5, 8-5, then whoever loses is going to have to fight to get into the 7th seed. So on top of it being a legitimacy test for the Commanders, it has heavy playoff implications, and who'd have thunk it? Nobody ever would have thought that week 13, the Commanders and Giants would be playing for a playoff spot. All right. It is time for our surgery on the Denver Broncos. I was telling the gentleman before I was trying to head to bed last night, and was thinking about all the stuff Jason said about, you're helpless right now. And I with the Walmart people in charge now of the Broncos, you don't know how to predict what they'll do to fix this. So I'll start off with what I think are the options for the team if they do anything at all. And there's a bunch. They can run it back, everything the same, and just consider this a growing pains year. It'd be a really long growing pain for it to take a whole season. They could scapegoat and fire Nathaniel Hackett, which I think is the most likely option, and then go hire a former Russell Wilson quarterback coach or something like that to start over and convince yourselves that Russell Wilson can't be that just bad because we're paying him all of this money. The other option, I believe, would be to, because it seems like it's the crime of the century, fire George Payton and then, let the Walmart people figure out who the next general manager is. And then they don't have to have the stink of that contract on them. And they can make the deadly decision to trade Russell Wilson to the dumbest, person that's going to do business for him. Or I guess you could bring in a new general manager who goes to find a coach. Like, they fire everybody but Russ, but Russ is right in the middle of this because of all the money that is in his bank account that is irreversible. Jason, I'll give you the first word about your emotions on these options, and then we'll start to get into the whodunit.
I just don't know. I mean, there's reports coming out of Denver that Nathaniel Hackett hasn't lost the locker room. Russ has, right? And then there's those reports coming out, and obviously this is all clickbait material, but it kind of goes to what I said earlier on in the season. It's like this guy's like Bo Callahan. Russ, why didn't anybody show up to your birthday party, dude?
Half the team.
And
half the team, goddamn
it.
Half the team, only half the team. So it's like I don't know what they do. I mean, can you? Okay, so let's take Russell Wilson out of this picture altogether.
Okay.
I loved and still do love George Payton.
Mm-hmm.
He conducted an extensive coaching search.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very intelligent football mind, from what I can tell. You guys have more history with him than I do, and you've even said the same. Yeah,
we thought it was going to be great. Mm-hmm.
From what you saw in Minnesota. So he narrows his coaching search down to, after all kinds of different 10 different people, and the finalists come down to Dan Quinn, Kevin O'Connell, and Nathaniel Hackett. I can't imagine that he's sitting in there knowing how important this decision is and just hires some idiot. Right? So I don't believe that Payton is bad, and nor do I believe that Hackett is this bad.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm starting to think is that this entire team is bad, and that these players were never as good as I thought, or I had convinced myself that they were. I mean, I have seen Cortland Sutton drop balls all year. I have seen Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler drop balls and go out injured. And that's not absolving Russell at all, because I thought he'd be able to elevate whatever team he was on, like Manning did. But that hasn't been the case at all. It looks to me like he's never played this position before. So, and then every now and again, you guys caught those primetime games. Every now and again, there's the Russ that we were all waiting for. When he made that little ridiculous shovel pass to Melvin Gordon when he was about ready to get sacked. That's the game that they actually beat the Niners, which, I mean, at one point in this season, they were 2-1. I still don't understand where the offense went after the first game in Seattle. That offense looked good, albeit the red zone problems. But then again, they were fully healthy then. They got 17 starters that are hurt. I don't know. Holy shit. I don't really know. Oh, man.
Wes, I think if you don't believe in Russell Wilson going forward, was he 34? You have to assume that he encountered a performance decline, kind of like Donovan McNabb, way early, age 34, 35, 33, I think, for McNabb, or that it was just an entire mirage for a decade in Seattle. And I think that's simply impossible. So, Wes, do you think, if you're Mr. Payton, do you just fire Hackett and go try this again? Or what do you do, Mr. Johnson?
I have no idea. I really don't. I think in some aspect you got to just ride it out for the season. Account for kind of these record number of injuries, or record number of money on the IR, and maybe with a complete healthy team, there's a little more cohesion, and Yeah, I really don't know though. I haven't watched many Broncos games past the two that were on national television just because they were painstaking to watch and
Oh, they all look like that.
yeah, that's what I'm hearing. So I really don't know. There's definitely been some questionable coaching decisions. Russ definitely hasn't looked like himself, or the Seattle self that a lot of us know.
Mm-hmm.
He himself seems like a fraud at times, at least in the public eye. With some of the things that he does, I don't know if he's more concerned with marketing and his brand and his image than studying the playbook or playing.
And all of that is fine and dandy, that marketing shit, when you're throwing 35 touchdowns a year.
Yeah, but he keeps this up. There isn't nobody that's going to want to sponsor him.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Cody.
Kelly Moore paint. You paint the walls, it dries quicker than this offense, something like that.
Oh man, alive. Well, and then the thing is too, is like, I haven't seen a play action bootleg yet this year. Haven't seen one. Don't know if they even have it in the offense. Russ just wants to be a pocket passer, and he's absolutely horrible at it. Horrible at it.
Cody, I think the only thing that can be done is, I don't know if you could lure like Sean Payton or somebody that, is infallible to make it tick. But we said this infallible stuff about the whole trade itself, the match made in heaven. So I should probably steer away from those adjectives. But Cody, what would you do, or what will they do?
For me, I think back to other situations maybe that we've seen this happen before. You got a lot of 1 year and done coaches, but one thing that sticks out to me is more recently is when the Panthers were sold. You had Ron Rivera, who he wasn't doing that great recently. He lost his job over there in Carolina for a reason, but he was at the Super Bowl recently, and they had some pretty dominant seasons over there. And I remember vividly that the Panthers just wanted a clean slate. They just wanted to start over with someone they were comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it didn't work out very well for them. But with the Broncos and their new owners, I mean, the only option I think that you have in this scenario is to get rid of the new guy who, if I'm not mistaken, was put in place by the old owners. And you go with someone that you're comfortable with. Maybe you're new to the whole football thing and you want someone to lead the team for you. Maybe Peyton's not that guy. You go get someone like Dan Quinn. I could see, they flirted with Dan Quinn in the past. I'm sure that the Broncos organization and Patton himself have nothing but great things to say about this guy. You look at what he did with Dallas this year. I mean, I know Jason don't want to hear about going back to a defensive head coach again, but I'm pretty sure that Denver as a whole will take any exit out of this trajectory.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the problems, I mean, Russell Wilson's straight up not good. I'm not defending the guy, but I feel like the problems are almost too obvious what it is. And for me, it's coaching. Whether they think that this guy's a cornball and they don't respect him, maybe he's not doing things the right way or doing it differently, maybe not hitting with these guys right. This seems like a situation kind of similar with Matt Rule and the Panthers, just maybe not that in your face yet to where you got people snickering on camera and stuff. But I mean, you got people walking by Russ over here, like that defensive tackle that was screaming at him.
Yeah, Purcell.
Yeah, I'm over here picturing Russ. He's over here like, it's Russell Wilson time. And that guy's all screaming at him like, stop saying it's Russell Wilson time.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just all over the roster. You got the defense, which has been amazing, which is, I mean, even more so for Dan Quinn to come over here. He knows he has something to hang his hat on and he could have instant success with. He just has to get the ground game going, get an established coordinator over here to run it for him. And I think that this team could turn things around, especially if you have someone utilizing the strengths of that team. I think, once again, I could be wrong on this. I didn't know where you're going deep diving into the Broncos, but I'm pretty sure they're near the top of the league in penalties and just other little coaching problems that, the receivers dropping the ball. Maybe work with your receivers on that more in practice. It seems simple. It seems dumb, but this guy's not inspiring greatness from this Denver squad. They need a proven guy who can go in there and do this for him. And I think the owner change could open a window to be like, Yeah, I know that nobody wants to see us fire a coach after the first year, but let's go ahead and wash our hands. It's the first year. We'll keep Patton because he kind of knows what's going on around here with the contracts and the roster construction and things like that. Let's get a defensive head coach in here who's a grizzled veteran, and let's right this ship. I mean, I do not think Nathaniel Hackett's the guy. I think the longer he's in there, the worst things are going to happen for this squad. But I do for sure think Russell Wilson is there next year. And as far as I'm concerned, there's 2 contracts that they need to look at, and only one of them cripples the future of the team, and that's Russell Wilson's. You got to keep that guy. Your head coach's contract does not affect your cap hit or anything like that. Go ahead and wash your hands of it. That's spilt milk. Russell Wilson's going to be here whether you like it or not. You got to figure something out, because this is not a 4-week little stretch to where we're like, what's go wrong with Russell Wilson? No, Russell Wilson stinks in this scheme. You got to get the scheme out.
And like with Dan Quinn, I'd be perfectly fine with that. I mean, bringing in now somebody that has experience for one, and there's talks that he'd bring in Brian Schottenheimer, who worked with Russ up in Seattle.
Yeah, do it.
How well do those guys get along with Russ is the question I have, though.
True.
I mean, and then not only that, because we don't know who gets along with Russ and who doesn't really. And then and even if it is Dan Quinn, he was a finalist for the job last year. Is there harsh feelings there to where he wouldn't even want the job? I mean, you know what I mean?
That's where it comes back to me again for coaching. You got a coach in there. Like, I know Bill Belichick's a GOAT and all, and it's unfair to compare people to him, but you think guys in that locker room are talking about their feelings or how they're going about a quarterback or anything like that when it's Bill Belichick? Or heck, even Dan Campbell, whose job is in question. I think Nathaniel Hackett maybe has an accountability problem.
Oh, yeah.
He can't keep his guys accountable. If you're a coach and you want a cohesive locker room, you're not going to have guys talking about, did you go to Russell Wilson's birthday party? And it's like, hell no, I wouldn't go to that guy's birthday party. He's a cornball. That's not, the coaches not have this team accountable. And I think that they need some dickhead to come in and be accountable. I mean, if you're going to be bad,
and not like Fangio, who never took accountability. It's like complete opposite is what it used to be. Fangio would get up there and blame his players. Never take ownership. Nathaniel Hackett gets up there and never blames his players and takes all the ownership.
Exactly. Yeah, and Nathaniel Hackett just has to go watch some Dan Campbell Hard Knocks or something like that. The guy might not be good at calling football games or drawing up good game plans, but the guy does get the most out of his men and he holds them accountable. Yeah, I'm not going to want to be over here yelling at the quarterback while Dan Campbell's standing right there. No, we're a fucking team, man. Like, but Nathaniel Hackett doesn't get that from his guys.
I think what favored him the most was that he was the complete anti-Vic Fangio. I mean, we were in such a hurry to move on from the old curmudgeon Fangio that you bring in this guy who's got this big personality and, he has for the most part, a good idea and a good plan, probably a good interviewer. And it just was like, this is the type of spark this team needs to get out from what we've been under the last 3 years.
Yeah. So desperate to move on. You got with a 4 thinking it was an 8.
Yep. Man, who knows?
Well, in retrospect, now what we know, 2.5 months, almost, 3 months into the season almost, it doesn't seem all that weird that Aaron Rodgers was a kingmaker of an offensive coordinator. Like, the guy had 2 MVP seasons and his offensive coordinator got his head coaching job accordingly. Now that was whispered, kind of. I think Wes even brought it up in the summer, like, is a possibility that he could have been writing coattails. Well, it looks like that might have been right. But yeah, with Dan Quinn, I think he kind of ended on a sour note in Atlanta. I think they went 7-9 the final 2 years, and then he was 0-5. But that shouldn't mean anything because with Belichick and Cleveland, Cleveland hated his guts.
Yeah.
When he benched Bernie Kosar, who was like Michael Jordan in Chicago to that franchise, the media, the fans, the ownership hated Belichick. Even when he took him to the playoffs, they hated him. And so I think every coach who ends up going out on a quiet note or a 500 record note has a chance at redemption. The difference between Rodgers, we're talking about his dead cap hit about 20 minutes ago, is that he has kind of the retirement option because he's my age. He's going to be 39, I think, next week. But Russell Wilson doesn't have to retire. So that's why it's so uniquely different with this dead cap conversation, is that there is no other way around. Assuming Wilson wants to make all of his $200 million, you have to acknowledge his presence and then ask him to be your QB1. And I don't think trading is a realistic option because it's just suicide.
Is it possible that a guy like Russell Wilson takes a look in the mirror and goes into George Payton's office and says, "Hey, look, man, I know I didn't live up to my end of the bargain. This is what I'm willing to do for the team." Nope. And then, something could potentially happen. I know that's not going to happen, but is it possible?
His agent would probably have a heart attack, but I think he could go in there and say, "I'm a fraud."
No way. Russell Wilson's crazy. We've established this multiple times on this podcast that there's something not right.
But I think he's got an ego problem, but at the same time, I think this has to bother him a bit.
Yeah.
I really honestly do. And one last thing I do want to say about Peyton.
But wouldn't have Russell Westbrook already done that with the go talk to your GM and I'm.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. That never happens.
I'm making amends. Let's do this thing.
I can hope. That's my hope. I can hope for that. I know it's not going to happen. But one last thing I will say about George Payton, though. Can you really fire a guy who, aside from, and granted, these are the moves that are absolutely killing this team right now with the coach and Russ, but shit. 6 months ago, everybody was celebrating this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Especially getting him signed before the other, big name quarterbacks inked their deals. Everything about what he did seemed to be on par with just, a very intelligent GM.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you can't grade somebody on hindsight. I understand that, but damn. God, that would be just a bruiser if this is what crushed him.
I think he's good. I think everything's magnified because of the losing and the expectations. But you look even in the same division at the Chargers. The Chargers, there's rumblings about if they fall on their face, they might fire their coach. I have not heard a single rumbling about they will fire their GM. And I think that theirs is masked by a 7-5 record right now. But you look at George Payton. He's had every bit as bad luck, if not even a little bit better luck than the Chargers GM has. But Payton he's made all the right moves. He's drafted a lot of the right guys. You could argue Justin Fields versus PS2 all you want. PS2's an all-pro if he isn't already. I think it's similar to the Chargers. You might see a head coach firing. You're not going to see the GM go. Payton's going to pick the next guy. I really do believe that. Payton, he's a stud, and even studs miss shots for sure.
I agree with that. And one thing I will say that I think really hurt the team, and a lot of people could argue, well, the offense wasn't doing anything earlier in the year when they were all healthy anyway. But at one point in time, they were 2-1. They were still trying to figure it out. Remember how often they were getting down to the red zone? They just couldn't score.
Mm-hmm. Fumbles.
So I think when Javonte Williams got hurt, I think that really threw the whole offensive playbook out the window. And they just started to, do whatever Russ wanted to do, which was stand in the pocket and throw, which clearly hasn't worked. But you take out, because then they tried to, get Melvin Gordon involved, but he just kept fumbling. So then you got to bench him and put in somebody like Mike Boone, but then he gets hurt. And then you got to bring people up off practice squads like Marlon Mack and frickin' Latavius Murray, who, yes, I know had a 52-yard rush the other day, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That having that constant bell cow back that you could count on, that you were basing your entire offense around for the most part, or at least going into the season. He caught 11 balls that first game against Seattle, rushed for 80.
That's usually when Russell Wilson is at his finest, is when he has beast mode or productive Chris Carson able to, rush for 10, 1,200 yards for sure. And then, then it's up to Russ to close out games. And he was so good at the closing out games,
seriously, I would encourage this. And you guys should watch that first game, the highlights from that first game against Seattle. aside from, because everybody made the big deal of, oh, they fumbled it twice on the one.
Mhm.
They had 5 opportunities to get down there or to score and they couldn't do it. But all that aside, watch how effortlessly that team moved it up and down the field. Judy had 130 yards receiving. Cortland Sutton had almost 80. You had their tight ends getting involved. Their running backs each had, almost 80 yards apiece. Russ had 340 yards passing and a touchdown. I mean, what happened?
Yeah, that's all a thing of the past. All of that production seems like somehow they regressed.
They didn't do it, but they haven't done anything like they did that first game since that first game.
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, that's what you can't put your thumb on because it should get better.
Yeah.
And George Payton with the masterclass move of releasing an angry Melvin Gordon, and he goes to the Chiefs. Now he's in a fumble in a critical moment for the Chiefs. That's how good Payton is. He knew.
Yeah, they have so many running backs. It's like I always look up and the Chiefs got they got like four running backs that they use.
And the projection on Sleeper for Jerick McKinnon is like 16 points.
Yeah, I saw that.
Me? I saw Melvin Gordon sign with them, and I was like, no, I'm done. I dropped him in our league. Let someone else pick him up and try to play him.
Gordon will probably do awesome though for the Chiefs. we can find out twice. Again. Never will.
Not only that, he recovers fumbles.
Think about so Wes, on my YouTube show about the Vikings today, I had Josh Fry on, who writes for purpleptsd.com, and a complete hypothetical. I can't believe I even came up with it. I asked him, let's say the Vikings close out this season with a whimper, whether they finish 10-7 or something, 11-6, or they get to the first round of the postseason and lose to the Falcons at home 30-0, something unforgivable. And all of the bad Kirk Cousins chat comes back up and people want to be done. I asked him if there was any scenario where he would send like a 4th rounder for one of the Wilson brothers, Russell Wilson or Zach Wilson. And he was like appalled that I even asked that. Think about that question 3 months ago.
Yeah.
We would have been like, take them both.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that the other day. Even as you started to talk about this, I was thinking in my head, like, I'm going to mention to them like Zach Wilson and purple. Would it be okay for a 3rd and a 4th? So I'm not appalled.
Yeah, because the verdict, he's not quite Josh Rosen yet. But yeah, the verdict's still out on him. Who knows if the attitude shit is real?
Yeah.
But yeah, Russell Wilson would be tricky because you'd get all the money too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the way that Josh reacted was just like, oh God, no, why did you even
a 2-year rookie contract over Nick Mullins? I would take it. Although Zach Wilson, the way he's handled this year, I'm so off of this guy.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about before, this guy is like Pat Mahomes in the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers 100% of the time. He is that Pat Mahomes all the time. So like when people say he has a Pat Mahomes ceiling, yeah, you're right, but it's not a good Pat Mahomes ceiling. He could make all these crazy throws without moving his legs or setting his feet. The thing is, though, in professional football, you got to do those things. But that is also something that could come with coaching, which is what the Jets thought they could do. And with our current staff, I'm confident in anything Kevin wants to do.
Yeah, and remember, no matter what happens with the Vikings, we'll end on this note, whether they win a couple playoffs games, lose the NFC Championship like we're all accustomed to, or even get to the Super Bowl. Kirk Cousins turns 35 this summer, and that changes everything because no longer does the narrative have to be, we got to get somebody better than Kirk. It's that you start to plan for life after anybody at age 35, so long as it isn't Rodgers or Brady. So any type of quarterback stuff on the atmosphere is actually reasonable now because you're plotting for life after Kirk, because there is always a chance when you hit that age that you're just ineffective. And I hate to say that because, we've come to love Mr. Cousins, Big Kirko. But
he's the most strapped guy in the league. His quote himself.
But we hit that. We're going to hit that part, that age, that 35, where now normally pocket passers can be just fine up until 38, 39. But it wouldn't be very unprecedented for one season. I mean, seeing it in Denver right now, Russell Wilson obviously is washed at age blah, blah, blah. Whatever. Is he 34?
Yeah, just turned. Yeah, his birthday yesterday.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the party. And on that note, the
fucking Bo Callahan, man.
Yeah, and the thing is, you started using that name like just when it started to smell a little foul.
I called that. I
yeah.
called this.
Yeah, you got a Vikings Super Bowl, and you got this one you called.
I did, man. So why didn't anybody show up to your birthday party, Bo? That's the question we need to figure out. That's what. Oh my God! And then it happened.
Movie script like. So, all right, gentlemen.
Every guest gets a bathroom in that house.
One quick outro. Speaking of Patrick Mahomes, I was watching the USC Notre Dame game this past weekend, and Caleb Williams, quarterback for USC. Go on YouTube, watch. They have like every pass play that he had. Go back and watch that. He is very Patrick Mahomes-esque.
He is him. He is the truth.
Yeah.
It is a good time to be a USC fan.
That's who we're going to get after we trade Russell Wilson after this year. We're going to get another team to commit, 25 a year to him. And we're going to take on like 80 million in dead cap. And we're going to tough it out for 1 year. We're going to get the number one pick, and we're going to take him.
Matt rules at Nebraska, though.
We won't even need a coach for that.
Wes, does he come out in 2024?
2024.
Okay.
Yep. And Drake May. That is another guy right up there with them. Those two quarterbacks. It's like having two Trevor Lawrences at the top.
Because we take that dead cap hit, we only need to suffer for 1 year. It can't be any worse than this year.
Then you might as well keep Hackett and let him be the total.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, might as well.
All right, gentlemen, we'll be back next Wednesday to go through all of the stuff. And I don't know if we'll have Broncos hour, but we'll see what kind of shit comes up. All right.
All right.
All right, later.
Good night, guys.